When Akira Toriyama first conceived of Dragon Ball, it's a good bet he had no idea he was about to unleash a cultural phenomenon upon the world. Yet here we sit 34 years after Goku's debut, and Dragon Ball is still a massive hit, going strong with the new anime series, Dragon Ball Super.
Let's hurry up and get this started!
Likewise, there have been countless video game adaptations of Dragon Ball, dating from as far back as the NES to the newly released Dragon Ball FighterZ. These games have come in various shapes and sizes, but some of the most celebrated installments came about during the heyday of the PlayStation 2. After 5 years without a major Dragon Ball game, a relatively new developer named Dimps, best known at the time for the Sonic Advance games, decided to create a new set of fighting games based around the popular Dragon Ball Z series. The first was Dragon Ball Z Budokai, released in 2002 for the PlayStation 2. Though it didn't fare well with critics, it posted impressive sales numbers, leading to a quick turnaround for the sequel, Dragon Ball Z Budokai 2, which arrived before the end of 2003. It received slightly higher marks than its predecessor, while still managing to sell an impressive amount of copies. Wanting to strike again while the iron was hot, Dimps turned out the next installment, Dragon Ball Z Budokai 3, in 2004.
Accept my challenge, Kakarot!
Dragon Ball fans eagerly awaited Budokai 3's release, and they weren't disappointed. It ended up being the best reviewed of the trilogy and the best-selling installment in Japan. Sales went slightly down in the US, but it still moved over 1 million copies. So there were a lot of fans fighting as their favorite heroes and villains, including legendary characters like Goku, Gohan, Trunks, Vegeta, Piccolo, Majin Buu, Frieza, and Cell. However, there was one character who was suspiciously absent from the roster: Bulma. For those not familiar with Dragon Ball, Bulma is a prominent character who aids Goku and friends throughout the entire series, but she is never really known for her fighting prowess. Instead, she relies on her brains and gadgets to outsmart the competition when possible. So when players began to ask why she wasn't present in the game, it was easy to dismiss because direct combat isn't a defining part of her character.
Let's finish it!
Despite such reasoning, though, there's a bit more to the story of whether or not Bulma was meant to be playable in Budokai 3. Shortly after the game's release, screenshots and videos surfaced on GameFAQs that showcased Bulma as a playable character in Budokai 3. These were reposted on several prominent Dragon Ball fan sites and immediately led to speculation about their legitimacy, as well as theories on how she could be unlocked in the game if it were true. While there was some skepticism around the videos, there are some factors that support the plausibility of the claim. Although she isn't playable by default, Bulma is actually present in the game. Budokai 3 includes a training mode with 12 different stages to complete, and in the 11th stage, your instructor is Bulma. She gives you the tutorial on how to use items called capsules in the middle of battle. You can try to fight her, but unfortunately, all Bulma does is either stand still or block your attacks.
Take this!
The important thing to take away from her inclusion is the fact that a complete 3D model of her is present in the game, as well as fully voiced audio clips found in the Dragon Universe cutscenes. So it's easy to see why some would come to the conclusion that if a model of her already exists, she may have been intended to be a playable character. But that isn't the only thing in the game's code that supports this theory.
They really do exist!
Over on Dragon Ball fansite Kanzenshu, which was known as Daizenshu EX at the time, the staff managed to rip some audio files from the game that contain a pair of announcer clips that can't be accessed through normal means. These announcer clips are identical in style to the name calls shouted before a match introducing the characters. Each character has 2 files, one with their name and verses in the line, and one with just their name. The 2 files discovered in the code that aren't heard during normal gameplay are for none other than Bulma. The first has Bulma verses, and the second contains just Bulma.
Bulma versus Bulma!
Why would the developers include these lines in the game if she wasn't meant to be playable? The evidence doesn't stop there. If you managed to snag a copy of the US Collector's Edition of Budokai 3, you were treated to a bonus disc with some behind-the-scenes features. A video included on the disc, called Behind the Screams, contains interviews with various voice actors and members of the recording team. This includes a segment with Tiffany Vollmer, the voice actor for Bulma, who can be seen on camera at the studio recording dialogue for the game.
You worry about him more than Goku does! Sounds like a good guy to me!
While this doesn't seem special at first, given Bulma has lines in the finished game, what's interesting is you can see Tiffany performing grunts and noises associated with the character fighting in a match.
Hi-ya! Ha! Hi-ya! Get back! Ha!
Why would Funimation, who handled the English dub of the game, spend time and money on Tiffany recording this type of fight-related dialogue if it wasn't originally intended to be used in the game for Bulma. The final piece of evidence from the US release of the game came with the assistance of cheat codes. By using Codebreaker or Action Replay codes, it's possible to use a cheat that unlocks every capsule in the game. For those unfamiliar with the game, capsules can be used as in-battle items to replenish health, or as special skills you can equip to your character, or they can unlock brand new fighters. After using the All Capsules code, players reported getting a gray capsule for a new fighter who shouldn't be available, Bulma. When you view the description of this capsule, it claims she is now available for use in the duel, tournament, and practice modes. Unfortunately, even with this capsule unlocked, Bulma still isn't playable. Yet this is another piece of solid evidence pointing towards the theory that she likely was meant to be playable in some capacity.
Let's finish it!
Things would reach a fever pitch once the game finally released in Japan a few months later in February 2005 as Dragon Ball Z3. This version of the game includes several differences from the US release, such as the full anime opening with lyrics, whereas the US version only has an instrumental version of the song. This version also features 3 unlockable costumes for Goku, Piccolo, and Trunks. Some players claimed that the Japanese version also finally offered a way to play as Bulma. The first person to make their evidence publicly available was a member of GameFAQs called DSXGate. Posting on the Budokai 3 forums at GameFAQs, DSXGate revealed that they were able to make Bulma playable after a sequence of events, though the user added a caveat that they weren't entirely sure of the specific process. What they were able to reveal is that the method they used employed a combination of obtaining 100% completion in the game, which included earning all capsules, finishing all modes, and hitting level 99 on every character in the Dragon Universe mode, and the use of Action Replay codes. Several fans claimed they unlocked Bulma through the same type of process, but it was DSXGate who provided the first video evidence. Unfortunately, despite our best efforts, we were unable to track down the original 2 videos. However, screenshots from the videos still exist. According to DSXGate and others, once you fulfill the necessary requirements, you can go into the item capsule shop and purchase a final capsule for Bulma. This would then unlock a 3rd costume for the character Videl. When using this costume, the fighter takes on the appearance of Bulma but retains Videl's moveset and voice work. Aside from looking like Bulma, there's nothing unique. After seeing the video evidence and being told of the various requirements needed to unlock Bulma as an outfit for Videl, other fans took it upon themselves to figure out the specifics behind this new revelation. Roughly a year after the Japanese release of Budokai 3, users came forward with cheat codes that would allow players to swap out character models for others present in the game. As expected, one of these codes would allow anyone to replace Videl's character model with that of Bulma. After the codes were made public, a handful of videos appeared online showing Bulma as playable. Some of these videos claimed to use the cheat codes, while others confessed to hacking the game's code directly to make her playable. At this point, we felt like it was time to try out the codes to see the results for ourselves.
Rocket punch! Start!
Before moving forward, it's important to know that there are numerous versions of Budokai 3. In the US, we got 3 versions: the original release in November 2004, the limited edition, which is the original release with a bonus DVD containing a behind-the-scenes video, and the eventual greatest hits version issued in the spring of 2006. Europe also got 3 versions: the original release in November 2004, the Platinum version in December 2004, and the Collector's Edition in summer of 2005. Australia also saw the game released in November of 2004, although it was identical to the original European release. Then, there's the Japanese version, which came out in February 2005. And finally, the Dragon Ball Z Budokai HD Collection, which was released in 2012, and includes Dragon Ball Z Budokai 3 and the original game in the series. While the original US and European releases are mostly the same, aside from the US version having the instrumental anime opening, while the European version has the lyrical one, the Japanese version contains numerous extras. These include bonus outfits for many of the characters, and a few extra Baba Crystal Ball movies, such as the commercials for Budokai 2 and 3.
Dragon Ball Z 2!
Eventually, Europe and the US would get some of these features in subsequent releases. The first of these is the European Platinum version, which released in December 2004. It includes the extra costumes and an option to select the Japanese voiceover. Later, in the summer of 2005, Europe would get the Collector's Edition, which is identical to the Platinum version. The other updated release is the US Greatest Hits version, which was advertised as having various bonus features like the 3 extra costumes in the Japanese version and the option to select the original Japanese voiceover in addition to the English voices. It ultimately ended up being just a direct port of the European Collector's Edition, with only a few different elements, like the instrumental anime opening. However, the original Greatest Hits release doesn't contain any of the promised extra features. Atari, the original publisher for the game in the US, had to go back and fix this, and issued another release for the game. Atari offered fans the chance to exchange their existing Greatest Hits copies for the new version, but for those trying to purchase a new copy with the extra features, Atari made it almost impossible to tell the difference. Last on the list is the Dragon Ball Z Budokai HD collection, which includes Budokai 3. While Bulma's model is still in the game, unfortunately, there are no cheat code devices compatible with the PS3 that can verify whether you can make her capsule appear or fight as her as a skin for Videl. There is a PS3 emulator currently available called RPC S3 that supports the popular debug software Cheat Engine. However, we were unable to locate anything related to modifying the Budokai HD collection. So for the purposes of this episode, we stuck to testing the PS2 versions of Budokai 3. The first thing we wanted to verify was whether or not we could get the Bulma capsule to appear. We decided to use the cheat code for unlocking all capsules in the game on the original US version, the US Greatest Hits version, the original European version, the European Collector's Edition, and finally, the Japanese version. We managed to get Bulma's capsule to appear in the Japanese version, as fans had claimed, and we were able to view the capsule in the US Greatest Hits version. However, we were unable to make her capsule appear in any other version of the game. The next step was to try out the action replay codes originally provided on Kanzenshu's forums. We obtained a physical copy of Dragon Ball Z3 and then used the action replay codes as instructed. After a few missteps, we were finally able to get them to work on our copy of the game. We selected Videl, who now appeared as Bulma, and jumped into a match to try her out. As expected, Bulma is only a superficial skin for Videl, as all her moves and her voiceover are identical. However, we got some rather interesting results when using the option to have Bulma fight against herself in one of the matches. Unfortunately, despite our best efforts, we couldn't replicate this in other versions of the game. We tried using the codes for the Japanese version on the US and European versions of the game to no avail. Our search did turn up one video by a YouTuber named KidMod Jr., who claimed to have figured out the code to use on the US version, but they didn't respond to our requests to discuss the matter. In all honesty though, there's a little reason to doubt that the same type of codes used in the Japanese version would exist in other versions of the game. Now that we had seen the proof with our own eyes, the question of whether or not any of this was originally intentional remained unanswered. Given that Bandai originally made the game and Bandai Namco later handled the HD collection, we started by reaching out to our contacts there, but we were unfortunately told that there isn't anyone still around who could shed some light on the subject. While performing research for this episode, we came across a claim that Steve Simmons, a translator for Dragon Ball at Funimation, revealed that Bulma would possibly be playable in some sort of capacity in Budokai 3. The ending credits for Budokai 3 list Steve Simmons as the translator for the English version of the game, so it would make sense that he would be privy to such info. The only problem is that we couldn't find the original source of the quote. All we could discern is that it originated from the Dragon Ball fan site DaizenShu-EX, which has since changed over to Kanzenshu. So we got in touch with one of the site's staff members, Mike, aka VegettoEX, and asked about the specifics behind the claim. While he was unable to provide us with the original exchange as it occurred via private messages on the old DaizenShu-EX forums and has since been lost, Mike was able to divulge the specifics of what was said to help clarify the claim. Shortly before the game's US release, Steve Simmons was asked about any extra hidden characters that fans weren't aware of yet. He answered that everything was pretty much known at that point, except for the chance that Bulma could possibly be playable in some capacity. However, Simmons said he wasn't entirely sure if that was correct, which basically forces us to take his claim with a grain of salt. Even if you assume the quote is true, it isn't enough to hang a verdict on, since Simmons reportedly wasn't sure himself. Yet, if you take everything into consideration, the capsule that unlocks Bulma still present in some versions, Bulma's fully rendered model present in the game, the unused announcer audio clips intended for Bulma, the behind-the-scenes video showing Bulma's English voice actor recording fighting noises for the game, Steve Simmons' supposed statement about Bulma, and action replay codes that make Bulma playable, it's hard to come to any other conclusion.
Okay, I get it now. But are you sure?
Although we don't have a definitive, on-the-record statement from someone involved in the game's development, the overwhelming evidence would lead any rational person to conclude that at some point, Bulma was indeed intended to be a playable character in Dragon Ball Z Budokai 3. However, why she was ultimately cut from the roster still remains a mystery.